Welcome to this week in the world of wrestling.
Welcome to TWitWoW, the best wrestling podcast made for wrestling fans, by wrestling fans, on the web today. I'm John, that's my cohort and commentary Ashton, and this is our Lucha Underground review. And I gotta say, folks, another great episode of Lucha Underground tonight. We had rivalries begin, we had rivalries end, we saw some exhibition matches from guys that it was great to see get some spotlight. Man, this show every week just gives me something to smile about. Ashton, what do you think of it?
Absolutely. When you say that every week it gives you something to smile about, that's the understatement of the century. This show is consistently just plain fun to watch. I'm not trying to say, oh, it has better wrestling than everyone else or anything like that. It's just plain fun. It's Mortal Kombat in the form of wrestling. Nothing can beat this.
Nothing, ever. I completely agree with you. This is a great show.
And the great thing is we're going to be reviewing NXT later, and that brings something completely different that I'm super looking forward to as well. So it's not like I'm at the point now that I don't even compare Lucha Underground to other wrestling shows anymore. It is in its own world as far as entertainment value goes.
Oh, absolutely. It's its own distinct entity at this point. I would hope so after so many episodes. And it just comes to the point now that with Lucha Underground and NXT, sharing the space that they do, it's a great time to be a wrestling fan, if for no other reason those two products. So, with that said, let's get right into our first segment, Heat of the Night. And I've got 0 heats of the night tonight. What about you, Ashton?
No, I don't have any heats of the night.
Then let's keep rolling on and let us get into our Lucha Underground review. And we have a cold open as we're set for some tag team action, Ashton.
Yeah, tag team action and a really fun, interesting kind of menagerie of different styles and personalities going on here. We have Cortez Castro and Mr. Cisco, accompanied, of course, by Bale, versus Pimpinela Escarlata and Mascarita Sagrada. So we have a couple of Thug Life gang member style dudes versus a very, very flamboyant gimmick with a dwarf, a mini wrestler. And this was very entertaining. Like, if I would have just told you that description of what this match was, and you had no clue who the people were in it, you would have been like, oh, wow, that sounds... Yeah, I'm going to skip out on that. But it's amazing.
Absolutely. And Pimpinela in particular worked his ass off in this match.
Yeah, he did. Like, every time he does something crazy, I just keep on reminding myself, this dude is 45 freaking years old.
I'm telling you, there's some fountain of youth in pro wrestling somewhere, and these guys are just some part of
dude, between Japan and Mexico, I don't know.
I know they got some working relationship going on, but yeah, Pimpinela, what I love about him is, he's a babyface, and yet he has the bizarro kind of psychological tactics that you'd affiliate with a Goldust or Rico in his later WWE years, with his gimmick, and it's great to see, and the crowd eats it up every time. And, Mascarita Escarlata, he was a fun partner, too. Unfortunately, though, he does eat the pin, because the gangsters do pick up the W after their, I think what Matt Striker called like a inverted, or like a lung blower assist type maneuver.
It was basically a flapjack into a lung blower.
Yeah, really cool double team. Probably one of my favorites I've seen in some time.
But that's what's so great, though, is that it's not like just because he's a mini, that doesn't mean that they treat him with any less respect than the normal-sized guys. He still required a true-to-form tag team finisher for them to get the 3 count on him.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, Ashton, and that's what I really love about Lucha Underground. That's what I think, again, attributes it to being its own distinct entity from everything else, because it gives, the people like Escarlata or Sexy Star that credibility that you wouldn't see elsewhere. So it's great stuff. So yeah, Cisco and Cortez do get the win. All the while, Big Rick was watching, and he didn't seem amused by any of the proceedings, Ashton.
Well, not only did he not seem amused, but apparently he wasn't finished when these guys were. He comes to the ring once the match is over, and he actually cuts a promo. He basically just says that he's coming for the gold. He looks at each of the three guys in the ring, Cortez, Castro, Mr. Cisco, and Bale, and kind of gives each of them individual stares and basically threatens them. He says that he doesn't care who gets in his way, and then that was when he kind of looked at each one of them, kind of pointing them out and being like, yeah, I don't care if you get in my way either. He's going for the championship. And then, I guess they weren't too happy with him saying that, so they actually teamed up to beat the crap out of him.
Yeah, this is a surprise. I mean, I guess I should have sensed it because when he handed Cisco the cigar, he kind of gave him this look like, what are you doing, man? And Big Rick was pretty much just like, deal with it. But yeah, it was a great beatdown. All three of them ganging up on Big Rick, showing that, hey, his power, as impressive as it is, does nothing when the numbers are in the opposition's favor.
Right.
And ultimately, to conclude it all, they took his cigar. And while two of the guys were holding them down, I forget who was holding it. I'm guessing it was Cisco that was probably holding the cigar. Burned Big Rick's eye, put it right in his eye. And, I mean, I love Vampiro's commentary here because he's like, man, I think I saw something like this in prison. It's just like it has that vibe. So, yeah, this is a great segment to start off the show here. And
this is the kind of segment that if you don't know how certain wrestlers are able to make things work, and by work I mean like make it seem real when they're really not doing it, this is the kind of segment that would make you incredibly uncomfortable, that would make you almost cringe, if not want to close your eyes. And I love that.
I love it too. And you know what, Ashton? Like, I think the timing of all of this makes sense. I mean, as Matt Stryker noted in the post-match, these guys in Aztec Warfare, none of Cueto's representatives even made it to the final six.
Yeah.
And just the idea.
Well, they were. I think they were 3 of the first 6 guys eliminated, actually.
Yeah, exactly. So, just considering all that, it's nice to see this kind of repackaging, with severing off Rick from everybody else. And it makes for a very interesting development, to say the least.
Absolutely. After this, though, we do get a backstage segment for a little bit of clearance or clairvoyance or whatever you want to call it on this. Some explanation on what just went down. And Dario Cueto actually pays off Cisco, Castro, and Bale for taking Rick out. And they mention him not being able to see, which I immediately say, okay, so we're going to get to see Ezekiel Jackson with a freaking eye patch. Yes, please.
Yeah, he is going to look, I mean, he's already a monster, but he is going to look so much more menacing with that eye patch. And you know what, like, if this is like a face turn, I hope it is more like that, I guess, anti-hero kind of turn where Big Rick just continues to destroy everybody, but his primary objective is destroying Cueto. It's nice to see that they kind of shifted that rivalry from Mundo having his beef because he didn't get paid to now Big Rick because, eye for an eye, literally and figuratively. Yeah. So.
And now Big Rick is going to become literally Nick Fury.
Exactly. Yeah, it's going to be good.
All right, so up next we had a sit-down interview, and I love this because the first half of this show, or at least the first third of it or so, was almost pure storyline because we open up with the tag match, but then immediately we get the promo, we get the beatdown, we get the backstage segment, and now we get the interview. And I love, and this is something that I actually said to you while we were watching it a little bit earlier on in the show, that I really wanted to make sure to highlight for TWitWoW here. I love that they're not afraid to change up the actual format of their show because so far, for the most part, they open with a recap of the previous week, and then we get some kind of a talking segment involving Cueto explaining something that either happened last week or is going to happen this week. And then we go into our first match. Whereas tonight, we cold opened on a match, got some storyline progression, and eventually worked our way to a Cueto segment. Cueto is actually quite sparse on this show, but then after all that stuff happens, we get our first sit-down interview. Or actually, you know what? Didn't we get one with Conan before?
We got one with Chavo before. That was the first one we got with Vampiro.
That's right. Okay, so we got our second sit-down interview here with Cage. And I gotta say, I wish that I could come on here and be like, oh man, this Cage dude, he's amazing. He's such a good talker. This is perfect. But he does leave something to be desired as far as talking goes.
I got that impression last week with his debut when he cut that very succinct promo. They call me Cage because I'm not a man, I'm a machine. And I didn't entirely groan. I don't want to, give that impression. But I'm like, oh man, the depth of your mic work probably isn't that much, is it? And yeah, this pretty much confirmed it. For the record, I liked what he said here. He kept it very, very straight to the point. He said, why should I wait in line when I know I'm the best here? I'm going to take what I want. Cueto wants blood and violence and all this stuff in his temple. Well, I'm providing that. So in return, I want that 20 pounds of gold. So, he was very direct, very to the point. But I do think he would benefit from having a spokesperson. Maybe Angela Fong will fill that role. Maybe it'll be somebody else. But I do think if he had a mouthpiece, it would be to his benefit for sure.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Because, don't get me wrong, his delivery is decent. But
Yeah.
he tends to repeat himself a lot.
Yes, that is something I noticed too.
And it's almost like you kind of get the hint that they give him bullet points, which is great, but he kind of repeats the bullet points over and over. Like for this, it was one of those things where like he had already said that he was the best luchador there, that he wasn't going to wait for his turn. And then Vampiro says, well, why are you the best? And he says, because I'm the best. And it's like, wait, what?
Yeah, it's circular. And, really, I would have even accepted a response like, you're seriously asking me why I'm the best? Did you not see what I did last week? My actions should speak for themselves. Something like that I think would have been far more substantive than just repeating because I'm the best. So, at least he delivers in the ring for the time being. Maybe he'll improve, as far as his talking goes, because, this program is still, so fresh, and he's still so fresh himself to the product, so we'll see.
Yeah, rule number 1 of public speaking, avoid tautologies.
Yeah, definitely.
I am the best because I am the best.
It proves itself.
Yeah, it's round because it doesn't have edges.
Absolutely.
All right, up next we had our second match of the night, but our first match in a string of 3 consecutive matches with no breaks in between. Superfly versus Pentagon Jr. I really don't care about Superfly, but man, is Pentagon Jr. awesome. And you know how earlier we were talking about how, man, the guys in Japan and Mexico seem to have found the fountain of youth. Well, Pentagon Jr. started his career in Mexico, went to Japan to learn the way of the samurai, at least the gimmick, and then came back to Mexico. So, good God, this guy could be 60 years old and we wouldn't know it.
Yeah, we really wouldn't, dude. That's actually not hyperbolic in the least, because with the way they perform, my God. But it's so great to see Pentagon Jr., a talent that I've been intrigued by for some time, get an exhibition match like this. For me, I think it's long overdue, and I'm so glad they delivered. Because Pentagon Jr., to me, Stryker had a very interesting line in this match. He said, these are 2 guys in Superfly and Pentagon Jr. that are in the middle of the pack, that are trying to find their way to the top tier. And I thought that really applied to Pentagon Jr., definitely. He's this guy that's kind of been a little bit under the radar, but I just think like any moment he could have that breakout moment, be in that program, do whatever, and be that top tier guy. And after seeing this match, like, I really want him to get there because his offense is so fun, so brutal. I love the backstory with the samurais, and, he just seems to have a very legit look about him. So, yeah, I would not be opposed.
Absolutely. And I think that everything that was in this match was everything you could have asked for. The one exception, though, and I will say, I wish we would have gotten a toss-up powerbomb because his looks absolutely devastating when he does it.
Yeah, and see, that's the word, Ashton, devastating. Here is a guy, and it has to be mentioned because I've never seen this before in my life, and I've been watching wrestling for well over 10 years.
I think I know what you're getting at, and I completely agree with you.
Yeah, here is a guy that he does a hard chop to the chest, and it elicits holy shit chants.
Yep. Well, for what it's worth, we didn't realize it when he did it because it was the first time that they did it for the night, but this crowd was pretty liberal with the holy shit chants.
That is true. I will concede that. But still, I don't think it really detracts from the point that Pentagon Jr. just has a way of making his offense just look absolutely brutal.
Yes, absolutely,
Up,
Yep.
And that's what's so great. And then there was actually a point, and I gotta give them credit, because again, they do squash matches, or as we like to call them here, the exhibition matches, because that's really what they are, so convincingly that there was a point I even said to you, because Superfly was kicking out of all this stuff and making a comeback. I'm like, could Superfly pull off the upset? Because, Pentagon Jr. has lost matches before, so it's not entirely beyond the realm of reason. But then Pentagon Jr. hits his package pile driver, and you just exclaimed, "It's over. Done." And it was. And again, I'm just.
And
so
you
happy.
were thinking that Superfly was going to reverse the package pile driver somehow.
Yeah, because when he had him in like the initial position, the initial pile driver position, it seemed like Superfly was struggling, so I thought he was going to reverse it into some kind of pinning combination. But then he kind of does a few like forearms to the back, and then he's able to lift him and get that leverage.
Yeah.
At which point I'm like, yeah, it's over. And I'm just so glad they gave Pentagon Jr. the W here. But it didn't even end there for Pentagon Jr. Because he cut a post match promo.
And it was actually, you know what? See, the problem here is that we can't say, "Oh man, his delivery was amazing," because he was talking in Spanish, and we don't really know what the delivery was. From an emotional standpoint, as far as his ability to emote and get the message across with facial expressions, body language, and tone of voice and diction and that kind of stuff, it was on point. It was definitely on point. He basically just said that he thought Chavo Guerrero was a legend, but it turns out he's a fraud. And I don't know the exact wording that he used, but long story short, he's looking for a partner to team with.
And just as a quick aside, because he wasn't even on this show tonight, but I feel the need to mention it. I mean, we talk about like all these top heels and stuff, Cage, Millward it is, but I mean, Chavo, even when he's not on the product, he's getting talked about, in a negative way. And I just love that everybody, regardless of their affiliation, wants a pound of flesh from Chavo Guerrero. I think that's really a good sign that he really is one of the top heels in this promotion, because just everybody hates him. It's great. And yeah, exactly as you said, Pentagon Jr. calls him out for being a fraud, but he says he knows one person that'll tag with him, which lends into that intrigue. Who is coming to Lucha Underground now? And that's a wonderful thing that we keep asking week to week, like what talents are going to step through the door. So I'm excited to see where this goes.
Yeah, absolutely. Up next, we had our third match of the night, and yet again, second in this little match of the string of three consecutive. Sexy Star versus El Mariachi Loco. And I gotta tell you, man, El Mariachi Loco is probably one of the most over heels that isn't actually that great of a character in this company.
Yeah, man, people were reveling in him just getting pummeled by Sexy Star. And you know what? I actually have to give commentary credit here. I know you and I have been quipping for some time. Like, pick a side if you're gonna, showcase women in this way, what you mean. And I can't believe the credit's actually gonna go to Stryker here, because there's one point in the match where Mariachi Loco grabs Sexy Star by the hair and just, yanks her down to the canvas. And Vampiro's like, "Oh, why you gotta go for the hair, man?" And Stryker's like, no, sympathy's gotta go out the window.
Yeah, for once, Matt Stryker actually made a decent point about a match involving a woman. I love it.
I know. I hope that's a trend that continues. I'm not holding my breath, but for this one night, I was certainly marking out, bro. It was really nice to see him, put in that kind of, he said, hey, she signed up for this. She's tough. She knows what she's getting into. And I'm like, thank you, Stryker of all people. And yes, Sexy Star brought it, man. She was really aggressive in this bout. I mean, kicking Mariachi Loco, flying all over the place. Ridiculous, man. And then finally, Mariachi Loco seems like he's going to turn it around. Goes for the crossbody off the top. Sexy Star, though, gets out of the way, hits him in the back, and then gets him in the inside cradle for the 3 count. So Sexy Star wins.
Yep. The one thing I will say, I wish she had a finisher.
I do, too. I completely agree. Even if it was like a top rope maneuver or something like that, just something that I can really say, wow, she put the exclamation point on it. That's it. Because I'm telling you, if they keep up this idea of, that she can beat any man, Lucha Underground could have a very special moment in a female world champion for their promotion down the line. I'm not, taking any chips away from that assertion. I think the more she wins, the more likely that becomes for down the road. So we'll see what the future holds for Sexy Star.
Yeah. like I said, wish she had a finisher, but I love that she got this win. I will say that. I mean, it would be nice if she could have gotten the win in a dominant fashion where she actually hits something that knocks the guy out long enough for her to pin him legit. But hey, I'll take a small package win over not a win. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So, yeah, up next we had our main event of the evening, moving pretty quickly through these things. King Cuerno versus Drago in the last Luchador standing match. And I don't know if this is going to be the last match in their feud. I kind of get the feeling that it won't based on the finish. But this was a solid match. I'm not going to go acting like it was some incredible. I still think that the triple threat on the second episode was probably the best match on this show so far. But this match was solid, and it got its point across, and it told a good story. And the finish, in my opinion, was perfect for the characters involved.
Two things that I really just want to say. First, in the context of the program as a whole, and then second, in the context of just this match specifically. First, I love how basic this whole story was.
Yeah.
Because this all started when Drago beat King Cuerno on his debut.
Yep.
So really what this boils down to is King Cuerno's pride was hurt. He was embarrassed, and now he's out for blood. And the second thing, which again is in the context of this match tonight, they built up to the weapons. They didn't use them willy-nilly. It actually really primarily relied on the physical acumen, the in-ring repertoires of each respective competitor, and it built up to weapon usage in the final few minutes. I love that, man. I love that. Because I feel like
it doesn't happen enough in wrestling nowadays.
I don't think it does. And you know what, like, that just goes to show for me, and I mean, Ashton, you know, I know you know your terms far better than I do, but I think it's appropriate to say, like, you can have psychology in matches like this. I don't think WWE understands that enough, because it seems like for their ladder matches, their TLC, like any type of specialty match, it's always about, okay, let's be as hardcore and as violent as possible, and let's make it a spot fest and send everybody home happy. But these guys actually cared about constructing a narrative and building up to that point. This way, when they did introduce the tables or the other weapons, it would get the biggest pops from the crowd. Yep. And it worked. It just brilliant here. Absolutely brilliant.
This company as a whole feels like what would happen if, I mean, obviously we already know that Robert Rodriguez is the director. So you take that and you add somebody who was booking a really successful territory in the 80s before Vince took over. And that's what this show feels like.
Perfect. I completely agree, 110%. In fact, it's so funny you say that and you use the term territory.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking to myself while watching this that if you were a really old school fan, and by old school I do mean that you knew your territories and you watched them, I think you would have eaten this main event up with a spoon. Like, it just seems so up the alley of that demographic. And I was just wrapped up in it within the first few minutes. I was like, man, this is so good. And this was probably one of the first really legit feuds to just, you know, begin and presumably end. But like you, I don't believe that it has, you know, right alongside Chavo and Blue Demon Jr. And I love the work that these two have done. And as you said, I mean, the back and forth between these guys was amazing. Drago at one point did a Hurricane Rana, you know, from inside the ring
to the outside on the apron to the outside of the floor.
Exactly. It was the craziest thing. Cuerno launching himself like a freaking dart onto
Drago. That was such a great moment too, because he did the bow and arrow taunt, and then he shot himself through the ropes like he was the freaking arrow. It was amazing.
I mean, so many great moments in this matchup, but then, you know, to get to the really significant points, Cuerno introduces the table, and I love the sense of continuity, because let's remember last week, you know, a table was brought in, and that caused the double count out. So they're bringing it in again this week, and, you know, they're battling over, like, who's going to go through it.
The continuity is so real.
It is, and I freaking love it. Because then Drago tries going for his maneuver. I forget what he calls it, but I knew what he was setting up for, but I just forget what he calls it personally. But then Cuerno fights out of it, and he gets his forward Death Valley driver, and, you know, through the table, which gets a holy shit chant from the crowd, which I will say was deserved because they built up to it. I'm thinking it's going to be over there, and Drago gets up at, I think, 9. And so it continues, and I love it here because Drago, he had no fight left. all he really did was get up, because then he's in the corner. Drago, drop kicks him Cuerno drop kicks him in the face. He's getting really hot now. Like, why won't you die? Why won't you just stay down? And then finally, he just gets like this cable or this cord or whatever, starts wrapping it around Drago, and he begins pulling. And I guess even though Drago was in the seated position and Cuerno was pulling and inflicting offense, the referee started to count, which kind of didn't make sense to me a little bit, because traditionally you're supposed to, give your opponent that space. You're not supposed to be on the attack when a count is in progress. But, regardless, I do think it was a great heelish tactic to pick up the win, which King Cuerno did here.
Yeah, and what's great about this is that they're playing off of the old John Cena duct tape, are you serious finish, but the right guy used the duct tape.
Exactly.
Because in the John Cena thing, the babyface used it, which makes no sense whatsoever, because it's such a dirty tactic. Like, you're using a technicality to win a match. That's how your babyface is going to win this match. That makes no sense whatsoever. But when King Cuerno, when a heel does it, it is so perfect, because it keeps Drago looking strong, because he basically did stand up. He had both of his feet on the mat pushing upwards, but the ropes were holding his upper body to the mat, so he couldn't fully stand up. So it keeps him looking strong, because it makes him look like he has that heart where he wouldn't have actually lost if not for the ropes being tied. And it allows Cuerno to win the match in a dirty way that gets him more heat. I love this.
Yeah, I love it as well. As I said, my only nitpick, and it really is a nitpick, was I don't know if it was in conflict with the rules of a last man standing match, and I maybe would have just preferred if he had just choked him out to the point where he passed out, and he could just leave him, like, just limp there in the ring as the count goes. But regardless, I mean, just as you said, a heel used this tactic, which was the right way to do something like this, and Cuerno gets the win. Really protects Drago, and that's something else I'm really noticing about this promotion. The characters that it's really invested in, when they know that they have to lose, they really go out of their way in protecting in very ingenious ways that, don't damage their credibility. You look at Mil Muertes, it took two guys to pin him in Aztec Warfare, and now Drago tonight, like you said, he was technically standing, but just with a choke out and everything, just couldn't manage it. So really great stuff. And yeah, Cuerno gets the win. So honestly, you know what? We talk about all these contenders for Puma. I'd have to put Cuerno on that list now with how he got the job done here tonight. I mean,
I disagree. I completely disagree. I don't think that just because Cuerno was smart enough to tie Drago's upper body to the mat to prevent him from being able to stand up, that makes him a title contender. I disagree completely.
I still have to disagree with you there. I think Drago is such a, beloved babyface and one of the, the bigger characters in the promotion, that to get the win, and we do say a win is a win, it's going to have to count for something down the road. But I think, of course, Cuerno's going to get more wins in the meantime.
Well, I think that my biggest thing, though, is that I think that this feud is not over.
Right.
So I don't think there's any way that Cuerno gets a title shot, considering I still think that he is feuding with Drago.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that, especially because, after the match he put on...
I could see the eventual, actual overall winner of this feud getting a title shot, but I don't think that this feud is over, and so I don't think it's fair to call King Cuerno the winner of the feud. He just won this one match.
Right.
By a technicality. By all means.
And, he did put the headdress on Drago afterwards, the whole deer head on him, which was quite interesting.
I like that, though. I think that it's like he's marking Drago as his prey.
Yeah, which is a better way to do it, because remember, when we first talked about the King Cuerno character, I was very enthusiastic, and I said, I think he should start taking masks, like a hunter has all these heads, he should start taking masks, but I honestly like this better, because it's more creative, it's not as by the numbers, and yeah, in fact, it even almost has like an eerie quality to it when you see it, like, whoa, I guess Drago now belongs to King Cuerno, so really good stuff.
Yeah, I definitely dig it. That's it, though. We didn't have any kind of post-match segments. This is how we closed the show. So 2 consecutive weeks with no Johnny Mundo, and I don't remember last week, but I'm pretty sure no Mil Muertes either.
No Mil Muertes either. Yeah, we were talking before the show. We're hoping to see both those guys, maybe even, doing a program with each other, as I would have liked to have seen. But yeah, they're still absent, which makes me think, though, that whenever they return, it's probably going to be in a huge way. So That's just got me excited. So
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I don't know about Mil Muertes versus Johnny Mundo, but regardless of whether they're going against each other or they find something else to do, those are two guys that I think are definitely crucial to this show, and they've put on 2 consecutive very, very entertaining shows without them, and I think that speaks for itself, really, for just how strong this brand is. It's awesome.
Yeah, and you know what? It's funny because I was getting ready to say when you said that they're 2 very crucial parts of the show, that I love that the show at least seems to disagree with us, because here they've gone 2 shows now with the utmost confidence and put on a great product. So yeah, you and I are definitely on the same wavelength as far as that's concerned. But where I'm interested, where you and I will differ, is in our next segment, high spots and low shots. Man, you know what? I gotta say, my low shot is Big Rick. I mean,
he kind of got blinded a little.
Yeah, I mean, a cigar to the eye. I mean, oh, you lost your match? Yeah, screw your day. I lost my eyesight, is pretty much what Big Rick would be telling everybody. And not only that, in the grander scheme of things, he lost his network. You know, he lost his pipeline to money,
he got cut off,
and everything else. Yeah, he got cut off completely. Yep. So now Big Rick is going to have to do things on his own, and yet, oddly enough, I think he's going to like it that way. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Man, you definitely took the best low shot of the night. But just for originality's sake, I guess, I'm going to go with Superfly, since he pretty much got destroyed.
Yeah, I mean, against a guy who, for all intents and purposes, despite the fact that we were a fan of him and everything, really didn't have the most impressive track record going into this. So I could have personally bought Superfly winning, and he still couldn't get the job done. So yeah, not a good night for Superfly.
Yeah. All right. What's your high spot?
Yeah, my high spot's also going to be incredibly obvious. You know, King Cuerno. Still enjoying the thrill of the hunt, so to speak, and certainly did that to Drago.
Oh, and by the way, that's something else that we didn't really talk about. He hit the thrill of the hunt through a table, and it still did not put Drago away for 10 count.
Yeah, that was actually my fault. I mentioned that he nailed his forward Death Valley Driver. I forgot the name of it in the moment, but it was the Thrill of the Hunt. But I just described it as that earlier because the name just didn't come to me. But yeah, Thrill of the Hunt through the table. Drago still answered by 9. Crazy matchup. But King Cuerno got the win, and he is quickly becoming, I think, one of the more compelling characters in Lucha Underground. I don't think anybody will really challenge Mil Muertes for me for that top spot. But man, Cuerno is really coming into his own. So I'm loving it.
All right. My high spot is going to be Sexy Star, because I believe this is the first singles match where she defeated a male opponent.
Yeah, I think you're right. Because did she ever beat Son of Havoc in a one-on-one match? I'm trying to think. Maybe she did.
Did she?
I'm thinking maybe she did. But regardless, you know, we haven't seen her in a one-on-one match, I think, against another male in some time. So, and you know, we do get back there, and she does get the win. So, nicely done by Sexy Star. Hell, I said during our personal review of that segment earlier that I feel like if she keeps this up, who's to say that she couldn't be a viable title contender one day, and Lucha Underground could really put themselves on the map with that. I mean, that'd be a press release to read. So,
yeah, I'm going to stick by it, because, I mean, even if she didn't win, even if this wasn't her first singles win against a guy, it was still a win, and the crowd is so behind her.
Yes, I think that's another thing that gives credibility to her future, you know, doing things like this, is the crowd actually cares.
It's crazy because I feel like she and Pimpinella and Mascarita are all almost more over as babyfaces than Drago.
I know, right? It's weird because I feel like Drago is like the best look, and is certainly like
the coolest,
the coolest for a crowd to really pop for. But it's those characters, the really colorful, kind of almost
underdogs
in life, underdogs. That just seem to win the day out. So good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, I do believe. I mean, as quick as this review might have been, I do believe that that's all we really have to say. Am I right?
Absolutely, man. I got nothing else. This show was amazing. So, guys, this has been Lucha Underground. This has been TWitWoW, the best wrestling podcast made for wrestling fans, by wrestling fans, on the web today. I'm John. That's my cohort and commentary, Ashton. Guys, be sure to comment and subscribe on YouTube. What were your favorite moments from this episode of Lucha Underground? Do you think Cage is prime and ready to take the title from Prince Puma? How do you think Big Rick is going to respond to being cut off? Also shift the discussion over to Pweetoff, an amazing pro wrestling group. And we will see you again for our NXT review, where the tension and anticipation mounts before the next live special, February 11th. We'll see you then, guys.